and welcome back to the 007 Files. This is David Leigh from the James Bond Dossier, and I'm here with my regular co-hosts, Bill Koenig and Javi Trujillo. Say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
And this week we also have a guest on. We have got Edward Biddulph, whose book, The James Bond Lover's Guide to Britain, has just been released. So I think many of you will know Edward from his blogs, James Bond Memes and James Bond Food. And this is actually his third book about James Bond. I don't know if you've ever written any non-Bond books as well, perhaps.
Only in the sense that I have written various monographs for in terms of my day job. I'm an archaeologist, so I've written a number of archaeological monographs on various sites. So that's the non-Bond writing on my part, but otherwise, no.
I've known Edward for, I think, about 15 years, and when I first came across his first book, which is License to Cook, he followed that up, how many years ago? 3-4 years ago with 00 Dining?
Yes, I think I was 22, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
And then there is this latest one which looks at Britain. So I think my first question to you, Edward, is after 2 books about food, why did you decide to switch to travel for your third book? Did you think that you'd covered everything with Bond and food, or was there another reason for doing this?
Well, actually, I was thinking of a third food-related book. I had the opportunity to pitch ideas to Pen and Sword, the publisher responsible for the Lover's Guide book, and I thought, well, how about a restaurant guide around the world? Take where would Bond eat around the world? And I thought about that, and I thought, well, there's obviously restaurants and eateries in the films, but also, of course, mentioned in the books. So I thought that would be quite a good idea, and if I could wrangle, I could actually visit some of these places.
That has 1 foot in food and 1 foot in travel anyway.
Yes, that's right.
You're already thinking of that anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And I sent that proposal in. The publisher wasn't so convinced about that, but and basically told me to think again. So I had another thought. Well, let's just do a book about locations. And after submitting that to the publisher, we agreed on that, and we went from there. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it made sense to do a locations book, particularly in Britain, because it would fit nicely with the publisher has a series called the Lover's Guide series, and there's all sorts of things that the Pen and Sword do. The Golf Lover's Guide to Scotland, for instance, which I'm sure Ian Fleming would be.
I think he would
read on that.
He'd have that in his library for sure.
Yes, that's right. And so yes, James Bond Lover's Guide to Britain sort of made sense in that sense, and so I fitted that. But also, I wanted, of course, film locations were top of the list with that. But I want a big. Obviously being a big Ian Fleming fan, wanted the literary locations in there as well, which has been covered to some extent by other things, but probably not for one volume for the whole of Britain. So in a crowded Bond book market, there was a little bit of a gap there. So I thought it was worth doing, and I had great fun researching and writing it.
Yeah. So how did you decide which locations to include, and were there many that you actually had to leave out?
Well, yes, I came up with a bit of a initial list, and what I wanted was I had things which I wanted to adhere to. I wanted to have sites that was aiming for accessibility. The sites had to be publicly accessible, so I wasn't going to include more obscure film locations where you on private land or in some warehouse or something, which would be really difficult to get to, and
probably the risk of arrest during research is too great.
Yeah, exactly. So accessibility was one key feature, and also I wanted a geographical spread. So I of course, there is already existing, a locations book about London, and obviously don't want to replicate that. But I could have filled a whole book just with London. So I suppose with London, I was the most selective. I couldn't put everything in, and so some things I had to leave out. So yeah, those two criteria I think were key for me. And as I went on, so I had my list, and some dropped off if I thought, well, actually, it's not quite so practical to get to this or that location. But as I was doing the research, I had other ideas, which I thought, well, I'm going to slot them in. So it was only later on I had the idea of having childhood places associated with the Bond actors. So the childhood home of Roger Moore, for instance, I put in things like that. So yes, it was a sort of moving thing really. I did chop and change as I went along. But, that was how my list evolved. I did have a word limit, which in a way helped because otherwise I'd probably still be writing now if I didn't have a word. It'd be a very big book. So it was good to have that and stick to that. So yeah, it was a really good exercise to do.
I was kind of curious if you could talk a little bit, Edward, about the photography. If I'm not mistaken, you took the majority of these photos, and they're really good. They're very professional, giving the reader, a modern look at what these sites look like today. What went into that, and what kind of training do you have in that arena?
Zero training, really.
Really?
I went out. Most of my family, these were weekend trips often, and so I had my wife and my daughter with me, and actually we probably shared the photography between us, my wife and I, and so I can't take credit for all the photographs. I'm actually pleasantly surprised how well the photographs have turned out.
Yeah, they look really good.
I'm not a photographer, and buildings are really quite difficult to take good pictures of, because you think, there's can't do anything wrong with taking a picture of a building, but then you take a picture, you think it's perfectly straight. Later on, you look at the building, and it's completely skew-whiff. You see what you thought was a nice straight angle. The camera is completely in the wrong place, and that was, so I took lots of pictures. So what's in there is pretty much the best of them, and actually I think I learned a lot about photography as much as anything else along the route. But I was quite pleased with photography, it especially because I was mainly doing this. Most of my travel, my visits were in between January and May, June time, and actually a lot of the time the weather wasn't great. If it wasn't raining, it was grey skies. So there are some photographs where it was a nice blue sky and sun was shining, and that was great, and I was able to get some good pictures. But I went up to Scotland and went to around Glencoe, Glenetive, where of course that famous scene in Skyfall, and the weather initially was all right, but as soon as I got out with my camera, the mist descended. There's I've included in the book the Glencoe Mountain Centre, not because that's particularly mentioned, but I thought that was quite a good centre, a good base for anyone exploring Glencoe to get the Andrew Bond connection, James' father. And so I thought that was a good place to which, because of course there's a nice, of course you go to the Glencoe Mountain Centre and you can go up the mountain, and so that was perfect. And I arrived at the car park, and it was a very nice day. And then I thought, I'll have a bit of lunch, and then that was a mistake, because after lunch, as you'll see in the photograph there, it's barely higher than the building.
The weather can change really, really quickly up there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much travel did you actually do?
Quite a bit. I spent about a week in Scotland, and going quite a few places there, and then another time went down Cornwall. Cornwall, you think of the Eden Project day, of course, but Ian Fleming, as a boy, was familiar with Cornwall, and I wanted to get that connection in as well. So there were a number of places in Cornwall that I wanted to go, but from where I'm based, it's quite a long way. So try to make the most of my limited time there, and then over to East Anglia, to Peterborough and the Nene Valley Railway. So yes, I mean, most weekends I was going somewhere, that 4 or 5 month period, and it would have taken me a long time to visit them had I not had that discipline and gone and had I not been writing the book. So it was always my ambition to go up to see the Skyfall locations in Scotland. But when I would have had the opportunity to do it, I don't know. And so this writing this book really it gave me that opportunity, which I probably wouldn't have had.
For the benefit of for people who have either not been to the UK or been very limited, what advice would you give in terms of what preparation they should do? I mean, speaking personally, the only time I went to the UK, I was there about 24 hours, and it was a stopover. It was part of a reporting trip, and the organizers gave us a quick tour of the obvious places in London, like on a Sunday night when there was no traffic. But obviously, you should start with a list, I would guess. But what in general should one do if they want to come to the UK for the first time or second time and try and see some of these same sites?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a number of sites do lend themselves together for a bit of a tour, and I mean the book is arranged by county, and within that the sites are grouped within geographic order. Well, for instance, the county I'm in, Buckinghamshire, the Buckinghamshire sites go from north to south. So one tip might be to aim for one region, or say a county or area of Britain, and concentrate on that and work a bit of a itinerary within that region. Otherwise, there's you could end up if you want to say visit one site and then another, and you realise actually there's quite some distance between them, and then involving a lot of different modes of transport, and that's not very efficient. So yeah, look for those sort of regional connections and build an itinerary from there. I think if you're going up to see the Scottish sites, then I do recommend taking Ordnance Survey maps, and their postcodes won't get you a lot of these locations. And actually, I do good. I know I talk about accessibility; they're all accessible. But to get to those points, you need to have the grid reference. For some of these places, that takes you closer than the postcode would. So yeah, arm yourself with Ordnance Survey map for that region, and good walking boots as well. If you're walking up to the scene of the helicopter chase in Russia with Love, then you can be clambering up some steep slopes. So that'll be my other recommendation. But otherwise, yes. I mean, I think just don't try and fit in too much. I think that's the thing. I mean, people should appreciate these spaces, and you go to the Nene Valley Railway. You could spend a whole day there, just going up and down the line, going to the station scene in the films, and that itself is a very nice day out. Pacing, I think, is also quite key.
Yeah, I think that's a good trip for travel generally, and because as you may know, I went to Matera about a month ago, and we were in Italy for 30 hours, and trying to fit everything in that 30 hours meant it was completely hectic. It was non-stop, and we just were exhausted.
You can tick these places off, but to appreciate them, you have to put in a little bit of time at those sites. Yes, but I mean, there is a. I've got one chapter is devoted to James Bond's routes through Kent, the Goldfinger route and the Moonraker route, and those will make very nice. Each of those will make very nice. A very nice day of Bond sightseeing, recreating those two routes. So that'll be another idea. An idea might be to you base in London, and then you hire a car and drive down to Ramsgate or a Deal, somewhere like that, and following those routes. I think that'll be absolutely perfect.
And head for a pub that Bond may have had lunch in for a ham sandwich and gin and tonic.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, I did look into those pubs. I mean, I couldn't see evidence that there was at the World's End that existed. But yeah, there are plenty of other options, and one can always find a pub and buy a ham sandwich and a gin and tonic. So,
yeah.
Sad to read the page where one of Bond's favorite restaurants, Scott's, was now a Five Guys restaurant.
Well, yeah.
But I appreciated that you at least included a photo of what it looks like today. So if you wanted to go be at that spot, you could be there. It's just the cuisine had changed.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yes, and yes, and it's even more disappointing because you can't even sit at Bond's favourite table. Because of the way that the upper floor is set out. Yes, that's a bit disappointing. I did go to the Scots as it exists now, and just to have that experience as best I could recreate it. But I mean, and of course, I did go to the Five Guys and for that experience of eating there. But and I did think it was quite an expensive burger. So perhaps the prices aren't so different from Scott's after all. So relatively speaking. But yeah, that's the thing. These I suppose one interesting thing about the research is to find out what's there, what's changed, and this is in a way of sort of charting those changes from Fleming's time.
Was there anywhere that required some detective work to find or find information on it, or was there anything that was particularly surprising that you visited?
Yes. I mean, there was. I did do quite a bit of detective work. I mean, and then there were things which sort of emerged as I was doing research. I mean, so those two road trips through Kent, for instance, that took although it's quite well described in the books, that took quite a bit of work just to map out that route and get the exact roads. I had a whole I was talking about Ordnance Survey maps, but I was equipped with maps of the 1950s and as well, so I could get the pre-motorway, the sort of road network as it existed. So that was a little bit of research work. I mean, maps are quite useful. I went to Stoner Park where scenes from Leigh Living Daylights were filmed, and looking at the maps again, I realised you could take a footpath from Stoner Park to Nettlebed, where the sort of the Fleming clan lived, and so that would be a very nice walk from Stoner Park to Nettlebed all the way around. So that was quite good to trace that, and at Stoner Park I discovered that that one-time owner of Stoner Park at the time of the First World War was in the same regiment as Valentine. In Fleming's fathers, and I'm sure they knew each other, so that was quite an odd connection. The really interesting thing I did was, I thought it was interesting so I wanted to get that geographical spread. I knew I needed something, a range of sites up in northern England, and whereas I have to admit it was a little bit sparse in northern England, but there are some. And I thought about On Her Majesty's Secret Service and all the geographical areas that they're mentioned in there with a range of farming. And thinking about Ruby Bartlett or Windsor in On Her Majesty's Secret Service and her family having a chicken farm in Morecambe Bay. So I thought, well, were there, at the time Fleming was writing, were there actually chicken farms in Morecambe Bay? So I delved into the archives, looked at historical newspapers and the trade listings at the time, and discovered, yes, there was quite a lot of chicken farms around Morecambe Bay. And of course, why wouldn't there be? I mean, Ian Fleming probably knew that and built that into the stories. So I have put a token or a site of a chicken farm that existed in Morecambe Bay in that at the time of the novel. In order to fill that spot, and of course people can travel to Morecambe Bay. So it's very nice part of the country as well, with with this coastline and hills around, and so yeah, again, well worth a trip and explore the sort of area that Ruby would have grown up in. So yeah, that was quite fun, and a bit surprising for me because I hadn't really considered it before writing the book.
Edward, what are your personal 2 or 3 favorites? Realizing, your perspective, you live in the UK, it could be different from others, but what are your top places that if I went up to you and say, Edward, where should I go that I, can't miss, must go to? What would you say?
Well, depends what your priorities really are in terms of Bond, or Bond Fleming, sort of the film's literary or sort of Fleming family, and so perhaps I'd ask you more about that. But I'd say I have a very soft spot for the locations in Kent, because I grew up in Maidstone, and so I knew the locations when I first read Moonraker when I was I don't know 11 or 12 or something like that, and then I realised Fleming was talking about the places I actually knew and I saw every day. And that was amazing for me, following Drax through Maidstone, and so that always for me is a key location, and so that's one of my favourite. I mean, it's town centre. It's not absolutely amazing to look at, but it has great sentimental value for me, really, in that sense. And even Thomas Wyatt Inn still survives, and it's still there, and you can eat there, and stop off and write secret messages on a piece of paper in the toilet. So there's all these things you can do. So that's for me. That would be my thing. But I mean, we think of Bond and luxury. So let's go with the luxurious things. Luton Who, as featured in Shrublands in Never Say Never Again, and of course featured in World's Not Enough. And Luton Who is a 5-star hotel. It's very close to Luton Airport, so if you're flying in and into Luton, then you can book a night at Luton Who Hotel. It's very nice, and it's absolutely spectacular scenery, and the house, the mansion house where a lot of the filming took place, is just amazing to be in. And so, of course, as part of my research, I did stay a couple of nights at Luton Who, at this 5-star hotel, and I would recommend that. And it has a spa and swim pool, so you could actually sort of recreate the Shrublands experience, if you like. But the food is probably a bit better than you probably would have had in Shrublands. I mentioned Cornwall. I stayed at the Tregenna Castle Hotel in St Ives, which is a place that Ian Fleming went with his family as a child. And that's another quite luxurious hotel resort, and I do recommend that as a base for the southwest. Of course, driving around Scotland, Scotland was the scenes around the Highlands were absolutely spectacular when the clouds lifted, and there's a bit of a circular route which you could plan on if you're flying to Glasgow. You hire a car, and then you drive up to Glencoe, and then you circle back round down the west coast and back to Glasgow. That's absolutely a perfect week's holiday, and plenty of Bond interest, Fleming interest, of course. Black Mount, and where the Fleming clan used to go on their shooting holidays. That'll be a top holiday destination, I think. That part of of Britain.
You're talking about Luton Who. Back at it was the late 1980s, I used to drive to work past Luton Who every day. But in those days, I don't think it was a hotel, but I have never visited it.
Yeah. Yes, it's probably been through a number of different changes over the years. Yeah, it's got a golf course now and everything, so you can have the complete Fleming experience. So, yeah. But it's often the way that the sites that are closest to you perhaps and especially if they're not really geared up at the time to be visited, then you can't give them much of a look in. But that's the thing. I mean, things. That's the other thing which I had to contend with. The fortunes of places I'm talking about change over the years. I mean, for instance, I was in two minds at the time of writing whether to include Stoke Park. Of course, the scene of the golf game in Goldfinger, and because it was actually closed, I couldn't visit it. It's been redeveloped. It's been under new ownership. At the time of writing, it was very unclear what was going on with Stoke Park. I believe things have changed a little bit, and perhaps you can visit there. I haven't looked, but I saw that was one site that I couldn't actually visit at the time because it wasn't accessible. But I thought, well, so I had some exceptions. I said at the start that I wanted sites to be accessible, but there were some things which I felt I just couldn't leave out. And Stoke Park, I thought, well, I had to include it. It's such an iconic sequence in the film. of Goldfinger, and perhaps one day it will be open and accessible to the public. And so I thought, right, I'm going to include it anyway. So I did. And I was always a bit worried that I'd write about a hotel or a pub or a restaurant, and then later on, after the book's published, that it will close down. So, but I suppose that's always going to be the way with these guidebooks. They're very much of the moment, and you take your chances.
No, absolutely.
Do in fact say in the book, best check before you travel.
I think if you'd missed Stoke Park out, you would have had people on social media screaming at you.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, I don't know whether I've completely avoided that because, there may well be some favourite sites that people have in mind, but they aren't in the book. But, well, I'm sure I can rustle up a second volume if absolutely necessary. So
there you go then, yeah. One thing is that, I mean, Britain has changed massively since Ian Fleming was alive and since the James Bond books, but are there any locations that you think still evoke the atmosphere of the novels?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. I don't want to keep on talking about this the sort of Kentish sort of experiences, but for those routes, of course, you're not on the motorway, and you're going down roads which actually are no longer the main roads through the county, and you do get that sense of Bond, and of course Ian Fleming himself, he would have taken these routes himself, going down to the south coast. You are transported somewhat back in time. I mean, I'm just thinking really places like Eton. I've put Eton is in the book. You'd expect it, the James Bond's school, and of course Fleming connections there with it as well. So that's. As you'd expect, it's from a place that won't have changed an awful lot because yes, all the shops on the high street will have changed, but the buildings are still there, and there's very much that the school dominates, and we've got the river nearby, and that's nice summer's day. You'd be walking through Eton or going out along the river, locations that are mentioned in Spy Love Me, the novel, and actually that wouldn't have changed an awful lot. If you put a boat out on the river and decided to recreate the boat trip from Viva Michelle's boat trip in The Spy Love Me, then you could do that, and you'd be transported right back.
Did you do the boat trip?
I didn't. No. That's on my to-do list. You caught me out there, but I did walk along the river as much of the route as I could. So yeah.
Real quick, I'll explain why I'm asking this. What side of the river is Eton on?
Yes, that's a good question because when you think about it, as the river wends its way through the places it does. I think it's
here's why I ask. It's a little obscure, but in 1964 there was an American TV show, panels trying to figure out who of three people is the real John Le Carré. He had taught at Eton, and one of the panelists had been stationed in England during World War II. So his question was, which side of the river is it on? And this caused a bit, well, do you mean upstream or downstream? And so they never really hashed it out. But having watched that, I'm just curious.
Must be on the south side because the river that flows towards from Maidenhead towards Windsor, and then out, of course, through eventually into London and out the estuary. So we must be on the south. I mean that's in a way it's a good question because I mean it's very for location searching because one of the locations in the book is Hurley Lock. It was used for the punting scene in From Russia with Love, and that I mean that it was quite difficult to try and track down the exact shot, and I suspect that what you see on the screen isn't quite how the location is now. I mean, I couldn't absolutely be sure where some of those shots were filmed, but it was there somewhere. But
yeah.
And one of the things I looked at, I had to go back to the film and look at which way the river was flowing in order to orientate me on the correct bank. I visited the correct side of the river, at least for that scene, and And in any case, it's another very nice area to be visiting.
For the record, the panel on that show were all stumped. They all voted for the wrong guy.
All right.
None of them voted for the real John Le Carré. So,
all right.
Little trivia
Awesome.
there.
The thing I appreciate about the book is that there's both literary and film references. Was there any talk when you were making it about trying to keep the balance between the film and literary sides even? Or is it just, well, the literary has more locations, so it's going to lean more heavily towards that? And just personally, what was your entry point into Bond? Was it the books or was it the films?
I think probably subconsciously I was going for a balance between literary and films, but it also depended on the regional balance. Had to cover the whole of the UK. So some regions are perhaps more literary or Fleming family heavy than film heavy, and so each region is unbalanced in that sense. But overall, I think I tried to go for a fairly even split, so that I tried to get representation for most films and books and doubt. But I didn't keep a particular tally, but I suppose subconsciously I was trying to keep it fairly balanced. Like I suppose most people, my entry point was into Bond was the films I expect. But I have to say I don't remember a time when I wasn't a James Bond fan, really. So I was very young. I mean, I have a vague memory of, I don't know where I saw it, but The Spy Loved Me, the Egyptian scenes, somehow that was embedded in my memory from a very young age. And also talking about Goldfinger and golf match, for some reason that's an early childhood memory. So I must have seen television. So yes, it was the films that got me into Bond. But it wasn't long before I picked up the books. I mean, yeah, said I was 10, 11, 12, that sort of period when I started reading the books. And those books were, absolute revelation, and been a literary fan ever since. There are some Bond fans who don't really engage very strongly with the novels, and to them I really do urge them to read the novels because I know it's amazing stuff. But also this is where Bond started. So yeah.
Well, do you remember which book you started with?
Yes, I do. You've just unlocked a memory there because it's quite like therapy now.
I tried to bring out something.
Yeah, my grandparents had the book club editions of The Spy Loved Me and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And actually, before I started reading the novels, when I visited my grandparents, I always saw this in the bookshelf, and I must have picked up those books and been really curious about the book just going on the cover. So inevitably, actually, those were the book club editions of those two books were the first ones I read. I think I started with On Her Majesty's Secret Service and then went on to Spy Loved Me. And actually, that's probably the best time to read The Spy Loved Me when you're not
no expectations whatsoever.
Expectations. And actually, I know it divides opinion as it always has, but I love the book, and the moment where Bond does appear in the final third, that was probably the most for this 10, 11, 12-year-old. It was the one of the most exciting things I'd ever read. That's always on one of my favourite Bond books, Spy Loved Me, even though it's so atypical. And I've got to continue to be a film fan. I'm not one of these Bond purists who thinks, I grew up in the Roger Moore era, really. So I do like Roger Moore films, and I've no qualms about these sort of liberties that have been taken with the literary source.
I'm a Bond purist, but my favourite Roger Moore Bond is the Man with the Golden Gun. So make of that what you will.
I do love it when the later films do incorporate a good chunk of Fleming, and I suppose. Again, it's where you start, and if I started with The Spy Loved Me, the film, then actually it's that's I probably appreciated from quite a young age that actually the film sort of path is different from the literary path. These two things go in different directions, they evolve differently, and that's absolutely fine. Although as I said, as long as they have various reference points at they sort of link in to Fleming at various times, and that's fine by me.
Okay, and to finish up this conversation, I suspect I know the answer, but maybe I'll be wrong. Out of all the places that you visited, is there any one in particular that delivers a big Bond moment when you're standing there?
Again, there's an emotional element to this, really, because not only is On Her Majesty's Secret Service one of my favourite novels, it's one of my favourite films. I'm very loath to rank Bond films, and for me, it's really perhaps there's a few which are right up there, and then all the rest is slightly below that. I mean, there's no way I can put them in absolute numerical order. Anyway, but at the top, we have. I think for me is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and so I got such a thrill when I went to Marlow and in south of Buckinghamshire, and the scene where Bond drives into Quarterdeck M's home that was filmed at Marlow, and you can still see the house no longer exists that was used for filming. No, but the gate it was remodeled completely. Yes, it was taken down at some point and all remodeled, but the gateway through which Bond drives is still there, and the very these sort of lovely buildings that you see as along the street that Bond drives along. That's still there, and there's a pub there called the Two Brewers, if I remember correctly, and that pub is still there, and as it appears in the film, and so we've got this. Apart from there's much more traffic now, and there's all the cars parked along the side, but actually that street scene is virtually unchanged, and being from my favourite Bond film, I was so happy to be there and record this scene, if you like. So
I thought you'd say the pass in Skyfall in the Highlands.
Well, yeah, that was good as well. Yes, yeah. That was a magical moment as well. Actually, actually, now that you mention it, although it's a quite narrow road, it's virtually single track road, and there are passing places, and so you've got to get the timing right. Otherwise, if you go past the passing place and then there's an oncoming car, then someone's going to have to give way and back along this valley road, and it's that'll be actually more advice that take your time. Don't rush, and otherwise,
and probably don't take your Aston Martin.
You'll get to the place, and you'll be a bit frazzled with all the driving, and you really want to enjoy it in its splendour. So relax, I think. So yeah, but otherwise, once you're there, it's absolutely stunning.
Okay, Edward, well, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Your new book is The James Bond Lover's Guide to Britain, and I don't remember the publisher's name.
It's Pen and Sword. It's White Owl. That's as part of the Pen and Sword publishing group.
Yeah.
So White Owl.
And so you can get it from their website, you can get it from Amazon, and presumably you can get it from any good bookshop.
Yes, I think so, yes. So, it's available from any good book retailer.
Yeah, okay. And just remind us where people can find you if they want to find you online.
Probably the best thing is to go to the James Bond Food website, and there's a contact page there, and if anyone wants to drop me a line, then just fill out the form and I'll get an email from them.
Okay. That sounds perfect. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Edward, and good luck with your book.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.